Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's lesson, we will learn how to answer WPS 03 Section A Developmental Psychology using an illustration from January 2025 paper. I'm going to explain to you how to interpret different types of questions, what the mark scheme requirements are for answering those questions, how you should organize and structure your answers, and what content you need to cover for different types of questions. I have covered videos for WPS 01 and 02 previously, so if you're interested in those, you can visit the edexcel, IAL and GCSE and GCE playlist on my channel. Before I begin with this lesson, I want you to know that I'm a private tutor for psychology. I've been tutoring edexcel, GCE, IAL, and GCSE psychology for more than 11 years now. So if you need to schedule your classes with me, my contact number and email ID are available in the description box and pinned comment below. Also, since many of you have been watching my videos, you have been requesting me to make dedicated videos specifically on writing skills. For example, how to write AO3 points in a way that we can get full marks, or how to cover AO1 in a way that we can meet all mark scheme requirements. I have covered such things in my previous videos, but now I've started making dedicated videos on these writing skills since they are so much in demand. You can access them easily by taking membership of my channel. You just have to pay a nominal fee, and you can access many such writing skills which will help you throughout in your GCSE or A levels curriculum, and also for university if you plan to take psychology ahead. So just visit my channel for membership. You can join in and you can access even more videos beyond what you're seeing now. Okay, so let's begin with today's lesson. Let's look at the first question. In developmental psychology, you will have learnt about Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Describe the pre operational stage of development. The first thing we should do is look at the command term. It is describe. It's an AO1 command term. Only AO1 means we only have to give description. No strengths and weaknesses will be credited, and there is no situation to which we have to apply the concept. Next, we should look at the marks. It is for 2 marks. So, first, we should give a definition of the concept. I've recommended in my previous videos also. For your AO1 type of short questions, always begin with the definition. That's good practice. And for a second point, since it's 2 marks, only the definition can't get 2 marks, I'll get 1 mark. Any elaboration or any example will do. There's so much you've learned in the pre-operational stage, literally anything from there. I'll give you some suggestions. After you give the definition, you can either contrast the pre-operational stage from the previous one, like how is it different from sensory motor, or with the one that comes after it, concrete operational. Alternatively, you can give any example in the form of any of the concepts that you have learned, or any of the skills that children are lacking in this stage. For example, lack of class inclusion, or lack of conservation, or egocentric thinking. Any of these you can give. Just make sure to give 2 points to justify 2 marks. The most common mistake is to give only 1 point and expect 2 marks for that. That is not how it works. Okay, let's look at the model answer. So, the model answer says that this stage is when children's thinking is mainly based on appearance rather than logical reasoning. We know that this is the stage which comes before the child can develop reasoning skills. So, this is a perfect definition. You might have learned some other definition from your reference material. You're most free to give that as long as it's accurate. Then, what is done in this answer? Egocentrism, which is one of the reasoning skills absent in this stage, like the ability to decenter is not there. That has been taken as an example. So, egocentrism is mentioned and it's defined, which is the inability to see things from another's perspective. Okay, so as simple as this, you can secure your 2 marks. Let's look at part B of this question. Explain one strength and one weakness of Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Again, first we look at the command term. It's explain. Now, explain is used for AO3 also, not only for AO1, because when it is immediately followed by strength and weakness, it becomes AO3. So, this answer is entirely AO3. We have to give only critical evaluation points. If we give descriptive points, for example, we just keep on giving definitions of pre-operational stage, operational stage, or any concept, we are not going to get marks. It has to be a strength and a weakness. And it is for 4 marks. So we can follow a simple outline. We can name and define a strength first, then give an elaboration or example from Piaget's theory. Then the same thing for the weakness, we can name a weakness and give any elaboration or example that is relevant to Piaget's theory. With this structure, very easily we'll be able to meet all the requirements. Before you write down a strength or weakness, you can just brainstorm through the strengths and weaknesses. Like what comes to my mind when it comes to Piaget's theory, strengths, he's been a pioneer of developmental stages. So many others have presented developmental stages after him, like Selman or Vygotsky to some extent has also presented stages. And also his research has been very heuristic because other researchers like Bjorn, by criticizing Piaget's theories, they have brought in many new ideas into the field which were not discovered until Piaget gave his theory. So it has just spurred in so much research in the area that it is very creditworthy. It has classic status in psychology. Another strength that comes to my mind is application. Piaget's methods have helped teachers shift away from classroom lecturing to active learning principles. So that's a very strong point. Another strength is any supporting research. Piaget himself has done so many experiments like the classic three mountain task to support egocentrism. So it's not just a theory, it is backed by evidence. So any of these, just finalize on one. I know it seems very obvious, but very commonly we see students, though one strength is mentioned, they give multiple because they don't know how to elaborate on one strength. So they try to compensate for lack of elaboration by giving two. But the rule is always that if one strength is asked for, the first one you name will be considered and the other one will be ignored entirely. So if you're trying to compensate for elaboration by bringing in another strength briefly, just know that it's not credit worthy at all and it's a waste of your time. In fact, it would be better if you don't give it at all and move to the next question. Okay, now coming to the weakness, in the same way, just brainstorm and finalize on one. There's a lot of contradictory evidence. I just mentioned Bergeron. Her studies can be given, the Naughty Teddy study can be given, or there are contradictory theories also, not only studies, like Vygotsky's theory, which gives more weightage to socio-cultural learning rather than uh, kind of like maturation based learning, which Piaget has indicated. Other weaknesses are that though it has been implemented in the classroom, for example, enough research is not available to suggest that it actually is superior to traditional lecturing methods. So, lots of parts of Piaget's theory, right from the theory itself, especially the ages which he's demarcated for when development takes place, to the applications that have been done to his theory, all have been criticized. Again, finalize any one weakness after brainstorming that you will take and take only that one. Then follow the structure which I have given. Keep elaborating on it instead of bringing in new points which will not get credit. Also, in the video, when I discuss with you, because I have to speak aloud everything, it can appear like it's too time consuming to think of points and all, but it isn't that way. When you think of it, it goes very quickly. So it's worth the effort to brainstorm before writing anything. Don't start writing blindly. And then you make mistakes, you cancel, you regret, and you become nervous for the rest of the paper. Think before writing. Don't write and then think. Okay, so let's look at the strength first in the model answer. Your real life application has been taken, and first you can see it is named. See, this is the application. And then this strength only application is elaborated upon by giving a specific example. Like physical objects can be used to help children learn about conservation instead of like just lecturing the children. So effective teaching methods have been brought about. You can give an even more specific example than this. Like it mentions conservation. You could give an example like the glass, tall glass, short glass demonstration can be done in front of children, and they can be made to answer questions as the demonstration is being done. So that way they become active participants in learning what conservation is rather than just being lectured about it from the teacher. Alternatively, you could also talk about age appropriate application in the classroom, like if children are in the sensory motor stage, for example, and they learn better by experiencing objects. So something like teacher wants to teach them about the properties of some metal or of sand, so she can bring in, I know sensory motor stage is too early, so you might be wondering why would a child be in school, but nowadays preschool is at happening at earlier and earlier stages. Or even you could suggest parents instead of teachers could want to, like if they want children to learn about the properties of any object, like say sand, they want the child to know about its texture, how it is different from the texture of other objects. They should let the child play with the sand. For example, let them make sand castles again instead of just showing them pictures of what it is or just telling them what it is. So any such example you can give to elaborate on the point instead of switching to another point. Weakness is the rigidity of the theory, where Piaget proposes that development has to only take place in fixed stages, like linking it to maturation. Again, to elaborate on this point, you could give an alternative view. So, Vygotsky has suggested that it's about social interaction with MKOs, more knowledgeable others. And so, children can develop at different paces because it's not about biological maturation, it's about how much aid they will receive from others around them. So again, one point is only taken, that how development might not occur in fixed stages, and that is elaborated upon by suggesting the opposite view, that it might not be fixed. So this is how you can get 4 marks. I will try to upload these answers on my website, but that can take some time. So at any point, if you need to refer to the answer further, you can take a screenshot, and that way you can save it for future reference. Let's come to the next question. For that, we have to read a scenario. Sabian is investigating the influence of daycare on children's language development. He has arranged to observe two groups of children aged 18 months. Group A, children who attend 4 days per week. Group B, children who do not attend daycare. Sabin used semi structured interview to gather both qualitative and quantitative data. He asked parents and preschool teachers open questions such as, what activities do you do with your children to help their language development? He also used a ranked scale to indicate the number of language exercises they do with their child each day. Explain one reason why qualitative data may be better than quantitative data in Sabin's research. Explain one reason. Explain is AO1, but because then they ask us to apply to Sabin's research, it becomes AO2 also. So you can think of it as partially, you just have to explain in general why qualitative data is better than quantitative, and then partially you have to, whatever point you have given, reason it out with Sabin's example. Okay, so make sure to cover both in the answer. The most common mistake is to do either one. Mostly students just do AO1. So in general, they'll explain why qualitative is better than quantitative. Like it's more in depth, so scope of findings increase. But they don't do the other bit, which is applying to Sabin's research. Alternatively, some students will just apply to Sabin's research, but they will not explain what the merit is in general. So make sure that you're doing both. Okay, and definitely 2 points you have to give for 2 marks, but I think that's very straightforward here because 1 mark is going into AO1, one is going into AO2. You don't need to think beyond that. Let's see the model answer. Qualitative data would be better because it can give detailed information. So that becomes like the AO1 part, where we are directly saying it's better than quantitative because it gives detailed information. And then coming to Sabin. How particularly it helps Sabin because he's investigating the types of activities that adults do with children. So he can look into why certain activities help, not just how many activities they do, but exactly how is it benefiting the child. He will be able to see that. The points are kind of merged. It's not like the student has written AO1 only first and then AO2 only. The student has constantly referred to Sabin's situation from the first point. That's fine. There is no issue with that. Just make sure that when you are doing it entirely with reference to the situation, also there is clear cut mention of why qualitative data is better than quantitative. So somehow or the other, even with reference to the situation, a general advantage that it is more detailed has to come across. Then only you'll get full marks. Just to complete this properly, I'll tell you what is the other way in which students write. They'll just give this part, for example. Sabin will come to know why certain activities help, not just how many are done. But if we give only this part, which I've put in brackets, is it mentioned anywhere that why he will get more information because qualitative is detailed? That mention is not there. So that is what is lacking from AO1 in many students' answers. So make sure that your answer is not proving to be of that type. Okay, now let's look at the next part of this question. Sabin also observed the child for a day and recorded the number of different words they could say. The data gathered is in table 1. Whenever there's a table in front of us, we should first look at the title of the table. That we saw number of different words that each child could say. Then we should look at the column headings. The first column is about the children who are in group A. They're just been identified by some alphabets. Second column is number of words that these children spoke, means children of group A spoke. So for example, child A spoke 55 words, B spoke 70 words, and so forth. Next column is about group B. Again, children are denoted by alphabets. And then the number of words spoken by these children are given in column 4. So for example, child F spoke 41 words and G spoke 38 words, and so forth. In the last row, we see ranges given. We can see a much larger range is there for group A who did attend daycare 4 days a week compared to children who did not attend daycare. Okay, so carefully we should read the table fully before we come to the question. One bad habit of students is to look at the question and then refer to the table. What happens is once you've seen the question, for example, here the question is about range. Then you look at the table, you have a tendency only to look at the last row because somewhere your mind tells you that only this is important, only this has been asked about. But the fact is, you cannot fully understand it unless you see the context. So, if this is how you're going to go about, you might miss out something very important that helps you to understand the range that you would have understood only if you would have seen the full table. So, make sure that you're looking at the full table and not only what is addressed in the question. If that was the case, in the question paper only, they would have just given you the range instead of giving every individual score. Those scores are significant. So make sure to take a look at them, just understand what is given before coming to the question. So now let's look at the question. Explain one weakness of Sabin using the range as his measure of dispersion. For this one strength, one weakness type of questions, as we've seen previously, these are AO3. Standard format, name the weakness, link it to Sabin situation, that's all. Okay, now you have learned about range in research methods and what is the weakness that you have learned. Again, from a general naming and explaining point of view, you have learned that it is a crude measure. Crude in the sense that it looks only at maximum minimum values and it just ignores the variability of the data between these extreme values. That is all that you have to apply to Sabin's situation. Now, How the rest of the table helps you, as I was telling you before, if only the range was given, you wouldn't be able to see the variability of the scores between the extreme scores. You can see it because the table is there in front of you. Again, it might seem like too time consuming, it's not when you do it mentally. For example, if you take the first group, the maximum number of words someone spoken is 70. The minimum someone has spoken is 40. Are the scores in between that variable you can consider? Like, do they really range from 40 to 70? They all seem more clustered towards 50 and early 60 range to me. In the same way, if you look at this range for group B, 13, the highest score here is 51 and the lowest is 38. Here, what does it look like? Like, what do the middle scores variability look? Do they really look very evenly spread out between 38 to 51? Yes, like there are scores at all places in between, unlike the previous one. So you're able to see all the trends in the data, which you would have not been able to see if only the range was presented. So it's good that the whole table has been given. So considering this, now you can write a very good answer. Let's see how it's put in the model answer. First, a general weakness of the range is named and identified, like range ignores all other values besides the highest and lowest. So, for example, in group A, the range is 30 words. But this could be skewed by one child who spoke a very high or low number of words. In this case, like we saw, indeed that is the case. That's why we have been able to decipher the trend. This is just one child who spoke in 70 words. Others are not even close to 70. The one who's got 63 is quite far away. In the same way, one's got 40. No one is as low as 40. Someone's 10 points above 40. So that is why we have been able to make the point relevant to the situation because we considered the whole trend. Alternatively, if you want to make your answer even better, I would recommend that you can include these things in the example, though they are not given in the model answer. Only group A has been correctly named. But what we saw just now, there was only one child who got 17, the one after that is the one who's got 63. Only one child who got 40, and the one after that, immediate after, who got higher score is 50. You can incorporate such things also in the example. Let's look at the next question. Explain one improvement Sabin could make to his investigation. For improvement type of questions, like I always tell you, they are AO3 only, just worded a little differently. Instead of strength or weakness, improvement is the word used. So they are somewhere in between, like how can you transition a weakness to a strength, that type of thing. So first thing is to name a weakness, like identify it correctly, and then suggest how that weakness can be overcome. So 2 points, 2 marks. They're always like this. Again, standard things. One is asked for, give one only. Don't try to compensate for your lack of elaboration by giving another. It doesn't give you credit. Second, brainstorm improvements before you answer this question. So you've seen so many things in the initial scenario, revisit it so that you can think of all possibilities. Like one thing I can see here is one group attends 4 days, others does not attend, not much variability. What about representation of children who attend daycare more frequently, like every day? Or children who attend more rarely? Instead of 4 days, they attend only 1 or 2 days. No representation, generalizability can be restricted. Interview semi structured, meaning that some fixed, some spontaneous questions would be asked, not fully fixed. So, some compromises there on reliability. Possibility that some parents and preschool teachers are being asked questions which others are not being asked. So, inconsistency in what is being asked, lowering reliability. Another weakness which I can see is open questions have been asked, subjective interpretation. It's up to Fabian to decide that what these parents and teachers are answering, what they reflect about children's language development. So, that can reduce validity. So, these are just some examples. I'm little restricted by time. I won't be able to consider all the weaknesses. Some you will find on the table also, like how range has been calculated instead of standard deviation and such things. So, a few examples I've given you how line by line you can scrutinize and identify weaknesses of different elements. Like where you see data, what's the weakness, the method used, what's the weakness, group classification or participant selection, what's the weakness, that way. I'm sure you can think of many others. You're free to take any, absolutely. And as long as you write correctly, marks are for writing accurately. So let's say here in the model answer, what is presented. Um, Standardized language activities should be used with the children. Like we saw, the activities are not standardized because in the daycare, the staff can be using any activity that's not prescribed by the researcher. So Sabin should make sure to introduce standardization into the procedure. He prescribes some activity which all the daycare workers have to follow. So this is the identification of the weakness, that standardized activities are not being used. It's only worded positively to suggest how it can move towards a strength. But in a sense, it's identification of a weakness. Then exactly why this needs to be done, how it needs to be done, that's present in the next sentence. Because it'll improve reliability because of the consistency, and any differences in language development will be eliminated. It should not be that in the home different types of activities are being done than in daycare, and because of this inconsistency, results being observed are different. These things should be constant, and then we should be able to see difference between daycare and home only. So this way he can ensure it by just making the daycare staff use the same activities. Okay, so that's it for the Sabian question. Let's come to the next one. Marina carried out a content analysis to see the effects of new writing program on grammatical ability of 10 to 11-year-old children. She approached her local school and gathered a stratified sample of boys and girls. Describe how Marina may have gathered a stratified sample. When they emphasize only on stratified sample, we understand they're going to ask something about it. Now, in many of my previous videos, also I've explained for stratified sample, random sample, typically there are two questions, how and why. You just have to be very careful in reading what question is being asked. Is it the how or the why? Yeah, they've asked how, means they want to know the process, the steps in identifying, in collecting a stratified sample. Still, many students will start giving a strength, why it is good to collect a stratified sample. So they will start suggesting how it is representing different groups, and so it's more generalizable. That will get you a zero if you write that, because the question is about how it's done. It's an AO2 question. Like I tell you, you can think of it as AO1, AO2 mixed. First, you'll have to define generally how stratified sampling is done, and then you have to apply to Marina. But if you start describing why it is done, you go into AO3, which is not the case. Like they're not asking you AO3. So if you start explaining the strength of it, you're deviating from what is asked. That's why you get zero. Okay, now you know what a stratified sample is. It is group-wise sampling. We identify groups of interest in the population, and then separately we sample each group so that all required groups are well represented in the sample, proportionally represented. Like as they in the population, in that much proportionally they should end up in the sample. So how Marina can do this in the context of 10 to 11-year-old children, you just have to explain that. Now, one thing you will realize in this, that they have not directly mentioned, but they have hinted like boys and girls should be there. So I always advise students, they tend to overlook some of the obvious. Like when stratified sampling comes, they will say, how do we know which groups Marina wants to represent? They might not say in so many words that she wants to represent this, but they do indicate. So just take a look at the questions, see which groups are mentioned. You know, gender groups are there in the population. So boys, girls. You know, age groups are there in the population. So 10 to 11 written as such, but you can assume say 10 and 11, the younger and the older. So that way you can give examples. Your examples don't have to be precise, but some students make them irrelevant. Don't make that mistake. Like it's mentioned 10 to 11 boys and girls. Say a student starts talking about, she can take rural students also and urban students also. It is possible to do rural and urban sampling in stratified sample, but how is that relevant to Marina? It has nothing to do with what is of her interest. So don't make up any groups which will be irrelevant to the question. Even if not directly mentioned, see, it's pretty clear which are the groups she's interested in, and stick to those. There, if you're not very perfect with the groups, like say someone says 10-year-old, 11-year-old, another student says 10, 10 and a half, and 11-year-old, that's fine. Just make sure that you're being relevant to what Marina is looking for. Don't go beyond what is she looking to represent in her study. So let's see the model answer. Like I told you, you can integrate AO1 and AO2 many times. The mark scheme just calls it AO2, but make sure general description is there somewhere of what stratified sampling is. So it's like identifying different subgroups and representing them. So that like helps in defining it. And then example you can see for Marina particularly, she can take 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and then we mix in the gender also. So 10-year-old girls, 10-year-old boys, 11-year-old girls, 11-year-old boys. Again, AO1 you can see proportionate representation should be there. So you can see all the elements of stratified sampling, what it is generally and how Marina can do it for age and gender. Everything is covered in this answer. Let's look at the next one. Describe one ethical issue Marina should have considered when investigating the grammatical ability of the children. Again, AO2, because again it has to do with Marina. I would say that for ethics, I always advise you've learned about 8 to 10 ethical guidelines in your syllabus. Just run through them mentally and see which ones will apply to this situation. Again, it seems lengthy, it's not, it doesn't take much time. So, for example, you've learned about informed consent. Does it seem particularly relevant to what Marina is doing? Or could there be a better one? So, just run through. If you do apply informed consent, what will you have to talk about? You will have to talk about she needs to take permission from their parents, and you'll have to justify why in this particular topic it can be important, because she's introducing them to say a new writing program, and so parents agreeability to expose their children to such programs, that needs to be considered. So if you feel you can make it relevant and show its importance, take this one, otherwise move to the next consideration. Right to withdraw. Parents can be told about their children's right to withdraw at any time if their child gets distressed by this program, because it seems to be difficult for them, or if they feel that they would like to discontinue because they are seeing some adverse effects of the program on their children. So they should just be explained that it is possible to leave the program at any time. So this way you can keep brainstorming through all the ethical guidelines. So there's also lack of deception, debriefing, confidentiality, privacy, protection from harm, right? So any of these can be taken. Key is the structure of the answer, naming the guideline. Most students miss out on this only, the very basic, naming the guideline. For example, they'll just say that parents should know that they can quit the program at any time. What is this called? What is this ethical guideline? It's called right to withdraw. That is not mentioned anywhere in the answer. So make it a habit, what I've called signposting in my previous videos. First, clearly name what you're going to address in the rest of the answer. So, say this is right to withdraw. Then explain it with reference to the context. How it can be done or why it is important to this context, just explain that. Here, more it should be about why rather than how, because they're asking you why she should have considered that ethical issue. Should have considered meaning why is it important. So, try to focus on that. Let's see the model answer. Protecting from psychological harm, the guideline is correctly named, and then why? Because if they are undergoing this program, their writing will be assessed, so they might feel they are being judged, that can lead to anxiety. So then she needs to clearly explain what the research is about, so that like they can take an informed decision. If they don't want to participate, in that case they'll be protected from harm. Okay, let's come to the next question. Okay, this completes Marina's situation. Now we have two essay questions, and I'm glad that we have two different types of essay questions. The first one is AO1 plus AO3 combination. So I'll be able to show to you how to write this one also. And the next one is AO1 plus AO2 combination. So I will be able to explain this one as well. So we get to see a good variety. It's not possible for me to cover all requirements in this video, but I will definitely go over as much as I can, especially the important ones I'm certainly covering. As I've mentioned before, if you need to see beyond this, you can watch some of my previous videos or you can take membership where in details I go into specific elements of answer writing. Let's see the question here. If you need to take a screenshot for reference, you can take it. I'm putting the full answer on the screen. Assess Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Okay, some general guidelines before we see the answer and before we get into this specific question. When you have an 8 marker and it is like assess, evaluate, discuss, like very obviously AO1 and AO3, make sure that your AO1 points first are not just passing points. Like sometimes for short answers, it's okay. If it's not very deep, just a definition is fine. But in AO1, you can check with the mark scheme. You have to show detailed understanding, in depth knowledge, good terminology, right? All of that is needed. So, just touching upon things should not be your strategy. Explaining should be your strategy. Most common problem we see while marking the essays is students are just naming points, just touching upon them, not showing their understanding at all. Like if I take an example from Vygotsky, ZPD. So they will just define ZPD as the difference between what the child knows and what the child is capable of knowing next. Nothing beyond that. And they actually feel just that much is enough and they can switch over to AO3 points after that. Some of you will be surprised to know, but literally there's only one sentence of AO1. And then they say, I've defined what ZPD is. Why am I not getting marks? Because AO1 is for 4 marks. How can one definition which you just touch upon it and you show no further understanding get you 4 marks? Like, how can it be justified? Okay, so I'm stating the obvious, but I want you to know that. Depth understanding. You know what ZPD is, but you know within that you have to explain things like scaffolding, MQs, what is the importance of ZPD, how it is like a socio-cultural perspective. So many things you have learned. That depth should come about in your answer. You can't say that, but they didn't ask me what is scaffolding. They didn't ask me what is MQ, so I'm not going to write. I'm just going to write what is ZPD. They have made it clear that they are assigning you 8 marks. So they made it very clear that they're not going to give you marks just for writing what is ZPD. So that argument doesn't stand. You will have to explain all related concepts to ZPD because then only it becomes clear what the ZPD is. And then only justifies 4 marks that they're giving you for AO1. And like I told you, terminology. So in within ZPD, when you're explaining that how say a parent or a teacher has to support the child, provide assistance to the child so that they can reach the next level, you don't just leave it at that. You explicitly name that this is called scaffolding. You use that term scaffolding when you explain. If you don't expect your answer to fall in the highest mark band. That's why there's a grading system. That's why there are levels. Because not every answer is equally good. One student is using the term scaffolding and explaining it. The other student is just explaining, not using the term scaffolding. How can both be given equal reward for the answer? So one will go in a lower level, then the other one will go. So make sure you write good terminology. That's why it's very important to be aware of what is required in the mark scheme. Like I said, understanding. Also, in depth knowledge. There are lots of concepts surrounding ZPD. Like I told you, scaffolding is there, MKOs are there. Cognitive abilities, how they develop, like what is the importance of this scaffolding, how interaction, socio-cultural interaction is important for growing. The more detail that you're going to give, of course, precisely, not rambling about it, the better the marks that you're going to get. Also, very common mistake. No doubt it's an assess or evaluate question just to give AO3 with the implication, like very big misinterpretation in students, that within AO3 also we describe. Within AO3 we give AO1 points. For example, in my AO3, if I'm saying Vygotsky's theory is superior to Piaget, so within that I'm giving examples and explaining that Vygotsky considers socio-cultural perspective but Piaget does not. So that should get AO1 points. No doubt it will. The examples, the description you're giving within AO3 will. But why I'm calling this a misinterpretation, because some author has very helpfully mentioned this in her book, that within AO3 only there are many AO1 points, so you can give a little more points of AO3 than you give for AO1. You can dedicate some more word count to that. But instead of understanding the intent of the author who has said this, misinterpreting it and trying to use it as an excuse for first not elaborating on the concept, that's not the spirit in which it should be taken. When they have said that within AO3 you give description, so yes, you can dedicate more word count to AO3 because some of it automatically goes towards AO1. That's right. But nowhere has the author said that means you don't describe the concept. That means you don't give related concepts like scaffolding or MQ. Of course, you give all of that. So you do cover AO1. And then, like you can see in this also, AO3 can be a little more, because in that also AO1 is there. But that doesn't mean AO1 will not be there at all and directly you start giving strengths and weaknesses. No. Next thing comes about approach. Should we take like a sandwich approach? Keep on alternating between AO1 and AO3? Or should we take like a separatist type of approach? AO1 separate, AO3 separate. I strongly recommend AO1 separate and AO3 separate. Why? Because students do a very poor job of sandwich approach integration. For a good organization or good flow, which is one requirement, coherence has to be there in your answer. For sandwich approach, you have to be very masterful in writing your answer. Like where you have left off with the importance of MQs, there you bring in an evaluation point that this is a strength of Vygotsky's theory, that he considers the contribution of MQs, which researchers like Piaget do not. And then you move to some other aspect of Vygotsky's theory, like where he talks about scaffolding, and then you say this is the strength because this can be applied to real classroom settings. Peer tutoring can be done, for example. So if you take a sandwich approach, you need to present AO1 and AO3 points in a way that whatever AO3 you're giving, it's stemming from the AO1 that you have just given. If you can do that, if you have that writing skill, then go for the sandwich approach. But if you can't, then what happens is it looks random. AO1 just referred to something else, AO3 is assessing something else, then comes another AO1 which is unrelated. Where is the answer heading towards? The organization or the clarity of writing is absent in such answers. So take the sandwich approach only if you are at that level where you can write it perfectly. Otherwise, take this separatist approach. Simple, neat, does not confuse the examiner, and you get a little more liberty. And you are capable of scoring the full marks also, even without having to think too much about relevance between points. Now, within AO3, general guidelines before we look at the answer. Peel format only. Logical chains of reasoning. That's the requirement of the mark scheme. And how do you achieve that requirement? By structuring your points in Peel format. The mark scheme does not say that we will give marks for Peel format, but they say chains of reasoning have to be shown in evaluation. How will you show chains of reasoning? By following the Peel format. What is the Peel format? I will show you when we look at the model answer. But if you need the depth of it, please watch some of my previous videos. I won't be able to cover it fully here. Okay, so make sure you give points in Peel format. Balance is required in AO3. Give strengths and weaknesses. Yes, your strengths or weaknesses can be in the form of counterpoints. You might say, I don't have a full strength and then a full weakness. To develop, that's fine. In your strength only you want to give a counterpoint, or in a weakness only you want to give a counterpoint, that's fine. Just make sure balance is there, not only strengths or only weaknesses throughout. What points you can give for evaluation? SCORDA. I've covered SCORDA in one of my membership videos. Again, I'll show you like SCORDA is supporting evidence, credibility, other explanations, debates, application to everyday life. It's a theory. It's not a study. So we can't take grave as such, so we can take SCORDA. to think of evaluation points. Preferably, I hope you have your essay outline ready for Vygotsky. It's a popular topic. You should be anticipating it and you should have an essay outline what you would cover if this is being asked. But if you don't, on the spot, if you need to improvise and write your answers, Skoda will help you to think of possible points. Finally, after AO1 and AO3, there is a requirement of balanced conclusion in Edexcel. There is no going away from it. So, yes, you will have to give a balanced conclusion in WPS 03. So, you will have to take your whole answer into account, mainly the AO3 points, and finally conclude with okay, this has been good about this theory, but then there have been these problems also. So, in that effect, you have to write a balanced conclusion. That's why also it's very important to have balance in your points. When you have balanced critical thinking, like you have strengths and weaknesses both, then only you're able to come to a conclusion which can account for both, which is not one sided. Conclusion has to be minimal, 2 or 3 lines. Like you can see here, don't dedicate too much of your word count to a conclusion, but make sure it is there because it's a requirement. You can't score full 8 unless you have balanced conclusion. I know all the same can seem abstract. Very soon with the model answer, I'll make it concrete. But also, you must be wondering what should be the word count for an 8 marker. I would recommend 300 to 350 words. There is no word count requirement as such given by the board, so it's up to you. Out of these 300 to 350 words, which I think roughly amounts to say 20 to 30 sentences, maybe 8 sentences, again, very roughly, very crudely, I'm telling you, could go for AO1. 8 to 10 sentences could go for AO3, given that you can be a little more uh, generous in your word count towards AO3. And the last 2 3 sentences can go to conclusion. I always believe that word count is a very superficial measure of writing, so I don't get into the depth of it, and it really takes away your attention from the main content. That should be your focus. You get too busy thinking about am I fitting the word count or not. So I don't encourage that, but still, as a rough idea, just because you might need some structure as to how to write, for that purpose I have mentioned this is no hard and fast rule. I want to make that clear. And most important for edexcel students from my experience, you use previous mark schemes to come up with points to write for your essays. That's really good, very good strategy, but very poorly used, I must say that. I have come across countless edexcel students, this is being encouraged in schools also, who are literally trying to memorize past mark schemes and just put down exactly that in the present question paper. Because edexcel has such an excellent collection from 2017 onwards, IAL psychology papers have been coming and the syllabus hasn't changed. So students have made a big collection of 2 to 3 papers they get from every year, and questions have been exhausted in so much time. So they're literally by hearting what is given in the mark scheme, like for an 8 mark under AO1, AO3, and they are trying to give exactly that. Then they're getting very poor marks in the paper and they're wondering why we didn't get marks. If you are only looking at the mark scheme and you are preparing from there, are you not seeing the pages which are given ahead of that section which you're memorizing, where there is a marking rubric? And in that, it is clearly mentioned that you will have to elaborate on the points that are given the mark scheme. Those are just guidelines, they are not the final points to be written. For example, in the mark scheme, if it's written one strength of Vygotsky is that it accounts for a socio-cultural perspective which classical theories like Piaget do not. On the very next page where you're seeing this strength as a guidance point, it's mentioned also their guidance. It's not mentioned that's a final answer. On the very next page on the rubric, it is written the points have to be developed. Are you not seeing that? You cannot selectively refer to what is written on the mark scheme. Are you not reading the part on the rubric where it is said logical chains of reasoning have to be shown? If you're writing in one sentence that Vygotsky's theory has a socio-cultural perspective which Piaget's does not. What is the logical chain of reasoning? Where is the reasoning in this? Where is the chain? How is the point building like in a peel format for which you can be given marks? So if you're using pass mark schemes for guidance, that's great. You should. But if you're using them to memorize, how are you using them to memorize? I'm not understanding that. And then becomes really frustrating to explain to students. They become stubborn. No, but we have written what is on the mark scheme. If that is the approach you're going to be taken, then don't be upset when you get a barely like D or E in your paper, because this is a fact. Students are getting D and E because they are feeling that what they are doing is correct. Marks you won't get on your feelings. Marks you will get on how you have written the answer on the paper. So, what is given to you, the AO1 and AO3 points that are given to you on the mark scheme? Those are guidelines. Those are suggestions of which points you can pick up and elaborate upon. That elaboration you have to do. And there is no requirement that all those points have to be given. Rather, take one or two points, take a depth approach, and elaborate on those points with full chains of reasoning. Rather than if five suggestions have been given, try to cover all five but don't develop one also. Okay, I won't be able to cover more on how to go in depth, but yes, on the model answer, I will show you how it goes into depth. And one last very important thing. One more thing I fail to understand is if you're looking at past mark schemes or your school is recommending that, are you not also reading the examiner's reports? Repeatedly, year after year, session after session, examiners are emphasizing on this only. The main part of the report tends to be details are not there in the answer. Logical chain of reasoning is not there. Essay performance is poor. AO3 writing is poor. So, are you not seeing that? So, again, selectively, you're seeing what you want to see and you're ignoring what you don't want to, or you're not being giving access to what is actually important. Like I said, then don't be upset when you get D and D. Okay, so now let's look at the model answer. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. When it starts this way, it begins with AO1. And terminology is immediate. ZPD has been specified with its full form and a definition has been given. Just like for the short answers, we begin with the definition. Same way for the essay answer also, we have to begin at that point. So, what is ZPD? It is that zone or that area in which the child is, in which they cannot perform any further at a high level without the help of a teacher. Immediately coming to scaffolding. I won't be able to read the whole answer line by line, but just keep seeing how terminology is being used. Scaffolding, relevant concept. It's the support that teachers and parents give, and then slowly take it away to make the child independent. Importance of socio-cultural perspective, like social interactions have been shown to be the key factor which takes the child ahead in ZPD. Also, elementary mental functions, cognitive abilities, the term used by Vygotsky for it was elementary mental functions. So, this is how they develop in the ZPD. I think more knowledgeable person or more knowledgeable other is already given. Besides that, uh, like when AO1 gets over, you can see how it's concluded by saying that this is how our interaction helps us to develop our skills. So, like I told you, you might feel the weightage here is less than AO3. So, some of it we can compensate in AO3 because there also some general descriptions will come. But what I want you to see, if you need, you can pause and read, is how AO1 has covered good terminology, in depth understanding of ZPD, everything before progressing towards AO3. Not just touching upon, say, ZPD scaffolding and rushing towards AO3. Now, coming to the evaluation part. Strength of ZPD is research support. So if I go by SCODA, supporting evidence that I have learned, I can give. So especially the textbook is so brilliant for IL. It's taken years to come out, but it's so amazing. You must have seen so many research support points. Any one of them, any one research. Like here, Abbas research is there, in which children were given like 6 weeks research, either with scaffolding techniques or with the no scaffolding techniques, which made for the control group. And the scaffolding group had better reading comprehension than the no scaffolding group. So, very clearly, a research has been defined and shown that it is supportive, and that is how the theory becomes valid, because it's not just speculation, there is actual empirical evidence to support it. I'll show you how Peel format has been used here. First, a point is given, like a strength feature has been identified, that there is research support. Then elaboration or example is of one specific study that has been done in this area. One question will come, if we don't remember the study or the year, it's okay. No need to mention. You can say one study has been done in which, and you can come to the procedure in one line and the result in one line. Then explanation. In the Peel format, this is explanation. Why is this a strength? Why is it a strength if Abbas's study is supporting the concept? Because it shows that it leads to real cognitive gains. It's not just a concept or a theory, it actually works in real life. Very contextualized though. The explanation of why it is a strength, not a general explanation that research support makes a theory concrete. No. In this particular study by Abbas, ZPD in particular is made concrete because it proposes that there will be cognitive gains, and the study shows that indeed there are cognitive gains. So, contextualized explanation. And then a link back to the question. They've asked us to assess the Vygotsky's theory of ZPD. So, what strength are we coming to know from this point of the theory? That it is a valid theory and it can be applied also to benefit children. Next, we can give a limitation to maintain balance. Like I told you, it's ideal to give a strength and then a limitation. Preferably follow this format. Limitation is that biological maturation is ignored. I told you one way of taking it as a strength would be to say that Vygotsky accounts for sociocultural, which Piaget does not. But then the other perspective is also there, which is taken in this model answer, that Piaget accounts for maturation, which Vygotsky does not. So we can take it that way also. So this is the point, signposting that we are giving a limitation and then naming the feature, which is a limitation, that there is no mention of biological maturation. Then elaboration or specific example, what do we mean by this? That Piaget has accounted for brain's readiness to develop at a certain level that helps to achieve a certain stage. Whereas Vygotsky assumes that just because of scaffolding, these abilities will come up. Specific example is also given here, like pre-operational stage. Vygotsky assumes that whether the child is pre-operational or operational, that will depend on the amount of scaffolding they are getting. But what about their brain's readiness or maturation to enter that stage? That is something which he doesn't account for. So, contextualized explanation then why this is a weakness. Because Vygotsky has overstated the power of social interaction, he has not considered other factors also which are required for cognitive ability development, like Piaget has. So, then finally, a link again back to the theory, that this is giving an incomplete explanation. So, Vygotsky's theory is not a complete explanation, especially only the ZPD concept. If we take it, it's not a complete explanation of cognitive development in children. Now, what I want you to see very importantly in the strength and weakness points are that there is balance, like I indicated. A good thing and a bad thing has been given about Vygotsky's theory. Most importantly, that will help me in giving a balanced conclusion at the end. So, it's very important. Besides that, I want you to see how only 2 points are there. I'm sure if you look at past mark schemes in which they've asked about Vygotsky's theory, they must have given 4 5 points possible that you can give an evaluation. There's no attempt to take all those points here. Only 2 points are taken. But can you see the level of depth in every point? Instead of just saying there is strong support, Abbas has supported. Biological maturation is not considered, Piaget would have considered that. Have you seen how every point has been developed? That is what brings marks. That is what is called logical chain of reasoning. And that's why what they give you in past mark schemes are just suggestions. You actually have to develop the points this way. In Peel format, like one paragraph each, then you score full marks on AO3. Like then your answer reaches top mark band in the rubric. So those points which you have prepared, not all of them have to be taken. Two well developed points have to be taken in the 8 marker essay, and that can get you full marks. Now coming to the conclusion. So how do we give a balanced conclusion? It is very valid, it's very useful, like we saw. And not only in Abbas's research, even in the beginning we saw, like it can help in like more knowledgeable others guiding young children into skills. So considering that EO1 as well as that theory support, definitely it's a very useful and valid theory. But the problem is it's underestimating the biological constraints which are there because of maturation. If the child hasn't reached a certain maturation ability, we cannot expect that only scaffolding will be enough to get the child to that level. So balanced view is that cognitive development is both social guidance and innate maturation. But Vygotsky's theory is not able to consider both. Okay, so this is what your answer should look like. Any AO1 plus AO3 answer. So any evaluate assess answer should look like this. Okay, now coming to the fifth question, which is a different type of essay, AO1 plus AO2. For AO1, whatever I've told you in the previous essay, that will stand here also. In-depth understanding, specialist terminology, elaboration. That all should be there. For AO2, again, up to you. You can take a sandwich approach. Students are little better in doing a sandwich for AO1 and AO2 more than AO1 and AO3. So you can give a knowledge point related to what's asked in the question. Immediately apply that to the situation in the question. Or alternatively, again, you can take the separatist approach where you can keep AO1 all points in one paragraph and AO2 all points in another paragraph. I recommend the sandwich approach for this one because students are good in doing application along with definitions or description. But if you have a problem still in that, then keep it separate. The key factor in deciding which approach you take is, can you make the point which you've given in AO1 relevant to the immediate next AO2 or AO3 point? If not, please don't take the sandwich approach. Now, what are guidelines for writing AO2? For AO3, like we saw, we have to give well developed points. Same thing for AO2. It's not much different. It's just that here we are not taking strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, if you're giving some point, I just realized the situation is only not here of Raphael. I will put it up just now. But let's say any point you're taking about ethical issues, say you're taking psychological harm, thoroughly link it to what is given. What I mean by that is some students will say children should be protected from psychological harm. Raphael is working with children, so he should also protect them from psychological harm. That doesn't make any sense. That's not thorough linkage. Or how you decide whether it's thorough linkage or not, think about if instead of Raphael, some other character was there, and instead of his situation, some other situation was there. Could you have just replaced the name of Raphael with, say, Zana? Say the other situation was about Zana. Could you have written exactly the same thing? If yes, then your point is too generic and it's not thorough. The point should be linked in such a way that it is highly specific or highly contextualized to what Raphael is doing. It should address his particular situation. So, only if you write in that way can it be considered a thorough AO2 point. So, make sure you're writing it in that way. Okay, more than anything, let me put up the situation because that's gone missing from you. And let's read the situation together before we discuss any further. Okay, so now we have the situation here. Let's just understand it. Raphael is a family therapist who specializes in attachment based therapy. He has been approached by a local daycare center that is concerned about the type of attachment demonstrated by a number of children. You know, when you're reading this only, you should be primed to remember what all you have learned in types of attachment. Again, it doesn't take any time. So consciously try to remember what was it that you learned in types of attachment. You learned about Bowlby and Ainsworth's research. In Ainsworth's research, you learned about secure, insecure types of attachment and some which are within insecure, like avoidant, ambivalent, anxious attachment styles. Okay, so just be ready with all these things because they are going to help you to write the answers. Before you read any further, the moment you identify some concepts that you've learned about, start thinking through them. Okay, then Raphael proposes to monitor the children and parents' interactions for a week using the strange situation procedure. Again, take a moment, pause, think what was the strange situation procedure. Trust me, when you pause and think, you're not taking away time from answer writing. You are adding time to answer writing. Because if without thinking all this you start writing answers, there is very high possibility you're going to make errors, then you're going to cancel, refer back, and you're going to waste a lot of time. So if you think thoroughly before writing, you'll be able to write quickly and correctly. Okay, what was strange situation? It was this controlled observation in which there is a mother, a, a caregiver with the child in a room, and then there are specific fixed 8 stages which are followed, in which importantly a stranger is introduced, and the child's reactions to the mother, her absence, the stranger, his absence, those type of things are noted. So this is what Raphael wants to do here. Also, not only what you've learned in attachment, start remembering what you've learned in ethics also. If children are involved, what all ethics become particularly relevant, like parents' permission has to be taken, so informed consent from parents. Researchers have to actively monitor if the child is showing any distress, because the child cannot be expected to actively express discomfort. So the researchers' responsibility increases in maintaining ethics. So just remember some of these general things you've learned, it'll make it easier for you to write the answer. He will monitor the parent child interactions. Raphael will then invite all the families to attend parenting skills classes, whatever the attachment style of the child. Before answering the question, summarize what you have read in your mind in your own words. Just ensure you've understood what is happening before you start writing. So, what I understand is Raphael is a therapist basically, and he wants to help children get the correct type of attachment, secure type of attachment, though it's not directly mentioned, but it's understood because that is the healthy type. And he intends to like give therapy in this area, like he's going to help parents provide secure attachment to their children. And regardless of whatever the attachment style is at present, he's going to drive them towards secure attachment. What he's hoping by doing this is that he will be able to promote healthy attachment. And in fact, he's been approached by local care center to make sure that children get correct attachment. Also, to see like where children are standing right now and accordingly then judge what sort of therapy they need. He's making use of the standard paradigm, the strange situation procedure, and after doing that research only he will decide how to go about his parenting skills program. Okay, got it, got what Raphael is doing. Now I can come to the answer. Okay, I've given you the general guidelines on how to structure AO1 and AO2. More I'll show you in the model answer. Just one more thing before we look at it. Again, balanced conclusion is needed here also. Your balanced conclusion might not exactly mean that, showing both sides strengths and weakness, because after all, this is not about AO3. But still, balanced conclusion in the sense, whatever strengths in a sense that we are seeing of applying ethics, so you can just think of it as positive ethical side of a basis study, and whatever obstacles we are seeing in applying those ethics, both we have to consider in the conclusion. So again, conclusion should not be one-sided. Okay, so now this is abstract. Let's understand with the model answer. After giving that full situation, what they've asked exactly is discuss ethical issues that Raphael is proposing to conduct in the research in relation to UNCRC. Needless to say, I think by now you've understood. First, you should start with something on UNCRC, or like AO1 perspective. So, of course, you can give the full term first to show you understand what it is. It is the Convention of Child Rights of the United Nations. And several principles are suggested in that, which are specific to children. You could just name a few of them or just explain why they're important. Like here, it is stated that Parents have prime responsibility for child's upbringing, and so informed consent should be taken from parents. So this is both. This is an example also of the ethics needed and why it's important. Also, children's interests must be primary consideration. So no doubt parents' permission has to be taken, but then researchers also have to see whether the child's best interest is being met or not. So this all is in Article 18. Then there's Article 13. In that, freedom of children to express their thoughts, and researchers should respect children's thoughts and listen to them even though they are not adults. Then there's Article 8, which talks about no stigmatizing or labeling of children, like their identity should not change because they've participated in the research. They should not come out with the stigmatizing label from it, like as if they're having some mental illness. So these are the general considerations. This is what makes for AO1. Like I told you, I recommend a sandwich approach where you have given Article 18. I would propose that you immediately say in context of Rafale how Article 18 can be applied. In this model answer, the sandwich approach has not been taken. Taking it would simply mean that this should have come here. That's all. That would be sandwich approach, and then we would have come to this paragraph. So it's okay. Like I told you, you can write it in this way also as it is written here. Okay, so Article 18, in which we saw informed consent, is there. How it is relevant to Rafale? Because he's using strange situation, and young children cannot consent. In the procedure, we know there's distress. You can make it more specific also by saying, like, when the stranger enters, that tends to be particularly distressing for children, or when the caregiver leaves them all alone, that becomes distressing. Caregiver leaves them only with the stranger, that becomes distressing. So that is why Raphael needs to make sure that parents know about all these distressing steps that are going to come in the strange situation procedure, and then they can decide whether they want their children to be a part of such a study or not. As I was telling you previously, I wanted to most focus on how this is very specific to Raphael using the strange situation procedure. It's not generic. It's not something that I could have given for another scenario that was presented. Like, let's say there was someone called Zana, and she was doing research on Vygotsky's theory. So she was going to look at scaffolding. I couldn't have given this point there because this is specific to strange situation, not to Vygotsky. That is why it goes in top mark band, because it is thorough application to what Raphael is doing. Why informed consent is important from parents in his case, it is about that. So that is the main thing you need to notice. The best interest principle which we saw is Article 13. Again, we could have given it there. Strange situation is designed to cause mild distress. So he needs to consider how he will manage that risk. You can suggest something specific also, like maybe some screening of the children, those who are already known to be prone to anxiety. He can avoid using them. Or he can think about larger application. How is he going to benefit? Because after all, he's going to give parenting skills later. So it gets justified with that consideration. Here, the suggestion given in this model answers he should be ready to stop the procedure at any time. So, looking at Article 13 and Article 8, given that it's also about their identity, so they don't come out as an anxious child, they don't come out with the label that they seem to have anxiety disorder. He should be ready to terminate the procedure at any time. Researchers get conflicted. Should they terminate the procedure because they have invested so much resources into it? So here we are clearly suggesting they should terminate it if the compromise is going to be on the child's mental health. Okay, so this is AO2. Here you can see AO1, AO2 are almost the same word count. Again, word count is about 300 to 350 words. They are well balanced here because in AO1 all the general explanation of the articles was given. So there was no AO1 being part of AO2 against which we could have justified like having a longer AO2. So generally that consideration is in AO1 plus AO3 type of essays, not AO1 plus AO2. Now coming to the conclusion, how we can give a balanced conclusion for this. So UNCRC has given a clear framework, like we can see, that is very clear. That is one thing which shines in the whole answer. So when it comes to Rafael in particular, parental consent is particularly concerning, like we've shown with Article 18, and prioritizing the child's welfare, like actively monitoring whether the child is comfortable. These are some potential obstacles or problems that can come in research. Distress is bound to be there in strange situation. But if he makes sure to carefully apply the principles, like actively he terminates a session if it's going beyond hand, then he can make sure that he helps the families also by developing his therapy. But he also conducts very ethically sound research in the process. So I hope you can see the balance in the conclusion. We are not saying that no ethical problem is going to come, it's going to come. But it can be overcome with the help of UNCRC. So we are showing both the sides that problems still exist, but UNCRC helps to overcome these problems. So that's it for this video. As I told you, I intend to make more WPS 03, WPS 04 videos. EdExcel Psychology has a very beautiful curriculum. Like you're very lucky if you're getting to learn psychology from EdExcel. What a beautiful curriculum. I salute the academicians who have made this curriculum. It is one of the best, if not the best, for psychology. The only thing is, it really disappoints me to see how it's being implemented so poorly, and there's so many misconceptions in students on how to go about learning this curriculum. So, my videos are like a small effort to, firstly, rectify the misconceptions that have come about, and second, bring back the enthusiasm and motivation in students for learning psychology. Because they do not fully understand the curriculum and because unnecessary difficulties are created in understanding how to go about it, students lose their interest in psychology after entering it. So I hope with the right direction, you're able to gain back your interest in psychology, which is much more important than any grade that you can get. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you soon again. Goodbye.